for Behavioral Studies and Therapies in Istanbul, and Rachel Calum from Manchester, who's a professor of child and family psychology. Really nice to have you all on the program. Ebru, let me begin with you here. As we look at the scale of the disaster, it's not just physical, it's mental, it's emotional, trauma, and suffering comes in many, many forms. Your advice to those who are trying to help would be what?
Well, this is such a huge crisis because the earthquake had devastating effects on the population living there. But at the same time, as Inger mentioned, there is a humanitarian crisis that is unfolding right now. So this is just the beginning. We have a lot of work to do in the coming days, months, and even years, because we know that psychological effects of earthquakes linger in the long term. After the 1999 earthquakes, we conducted studies in the earthquake region, and with over 1,000 to 2,300 people, we found that those effects do not resolve with time. In 1 to 4 years after trauma, the rates of traumatic stress reactions remain the same, and 40% of the population had these reactions. So we are going to deal with so many chronic problems in the coming years, and we definitely need effective interventions to deal with this impact of the disaster on both children and adults at the same time.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned both children and adults at the same time, because Rachel, it reminds me of the fact that when you are in an airplane, they tell you, well, in case of emergency, you put on the oxygen mask for yourself first, you buckle up first, then you help somebody else. And do we have to be cognizant of that fact that if you cannot be healthy, if you cannot be of sound mind and taking care of yourself, then there's very little chance that the children are going to be helped as well.
One of the things that we really advise is that parents look after themselves as part of looking after the children that they're looking after, that caregivers and parents look after themselves. And we've produced brief advice that helps parents and caregivers take care of themselves and take care of the children that they're responsible for, because they're so interlinked. And the mental health and physical health of both are absolutely interlinked.
Right. Ebru, whose responsibility is this? I mean, it's a question that's difficult to answer when I think about it, because do you intervene and try and force it? I mean, if I think about people who are suffering on the ground, they've lost their homes, they've lost family members, one would think that sometimes the last thing they'd want is somebody to show up and say, how are you feeling? I'm here to make you feel better. How do you navigate this and finesse it in a way that allows people to heal at their own pace in their own time?
Well, I think many people rush into the earthquake region with good intentions. They want to help, and I understand this. But they need to be very careful, actually, because we know that after the traumatic events, over 90% of the survivors are affected psychologically. They develop acute traumatic stress responses, but these responses resolve in time by themselves. So there are natural recovery processes that are responsible for people's healing in time. So the interventions that are offered to survivors should not stop or interfere with these processes. So I think, that road to hell is paved with good intentions. People need to be careful. They need to be well trained. They should know what to do and when to do it and how to do it. So rather than doing this unsystematically and offering them, some kind of a psychological support without any evidence base, we should wait and we should plan and develop a program to reach out to people there when they are ready to receive this kind of help. Now they are dealing with their basic needs. They need shelter, they need food, they need some kind of stability in their lives. So we need to wait for these to happen. Of course, there will be people who will need help right now, and they will reach out to aid organizations or people offering such help.
Rachel, can you actually tackle the collective trauma and the individual trauma at the same time?
Well, I think what the previous speaker was saying was really important, because we can't just be jumping in and trying to offer lots of help. What we can do at this stage, or at least as soon as people have a roof over their heads and something to eat, is to provide some really basic information that can help to answer questions that they may have really immediately about caring for their children. Because for many people, this will be their first experience of a major trauma. They'll be seeing changes in their children and really not understanding that these are extremely common reactions. And as everyone was saying, these are reactions that will calm in time for a lot of children. So it's not a matter of jumping in and providing interventions straight away. That happens further down the line. But for now, there's all sorts of really helpful things that caregivers can be alerted to regarding how common these sorts of reactions are, what to expect, and also really important aspects of keeping children safe. So making sure that they're, reducing the risk of a whole multitude of secondary harms that could come about in these kinds of circumstances.
And as I circle this back to Inga Ashing, Inga, as the CEO of Save the Children, no doubt there has been a lot of progress among a lot of charities, aid organizations in the past couple of decades, where mental health, responding to trauma, these are taken far more seriously. You would probably, I would guess, have a lot of clinical psychologists working for Save the Children as well. Tell me the importance of that aspect in addition to feeding, housing, keeping safe.
So I agree with Ebru and Rachel that of course in an emergency, in a crisis, we need to attend to the basic needs first. But my experience and our experience is that it is important to make sure that we provide a space for children and their families to actually get access to some of the psychosocial support as well. What we often offer as an organization is what we call child-friendly spaces, and that is a space where you as a child can come, you can play, you can engage with facilitators in that safe space, and they are trained to also be able to provide basic psychosocial support, and because there's a lot of trauma, and as I also think, as Ebru, I think it was Ebru who said that. I mean, this is not something that we will need to respond in months and years to come, because this will be a massive trauma for the whole region that has been affected, and ensuring that we have, when we have provided for the basics needs, that we actually have a long-term commitment to the people that are affected, and from my perspective, really ensuring that children have child protection services provided to them, because there's a huge risk that they are being victims of other crises right now, and attending to their mental health, because as you say, Save the Children and all our other humanitarian responders, the mental health component in our responses is absolutely key in everything we do.
Ebru, how can we as the media do better? Because sometimes we're not mindful about our contribution to this. Go ahead, criticize us.
God, this is well, of course, the portrayal of the images from the earthquake region is traumatizing for so many people, because they are anxiety-provoking, fear-evoking images for so many people who experienced the earthquake in the region, and who live in the regions that are going to be affected by another earthquake. For example, Istanbul is at risk of another earthquake, and these images are extremely frightening for people who watch. So maybe this kind of fear may mobilize them to take some cautions. Maybe they can be useful in earthquake preparedness efforts. So if it is utilized in a good way, yes, they can be helpful. But too much fear usually is debilitating. When
Right.
people are too afraid, they do not take action. So I think the media should be more responsible when it comes to show images from the earthquake region, and the emotional tone of the of how to portray them is also important. I think they need to be more, I don't know, objective rather than dramatizing.
Right.
Because we see this, that we see images with emotional music behind and descriptions with dramatic words. This is not objective reporting, and it is actually frightening so many people.
Yeah, these are interesting points that you make, and it's something that we wrestle with a lot of the time. And unfortunately, we are out of time. It's something that I'd love to discuss further. But Rachel, Ebru, and Inga, it is a pleasure having you all on the program. My sincere thank you for joining us on this special program here. Well, that's the news for now. We'll leave you with some pictures from the latest rescue operations in the quake-hit areas.